Break the Ice podcast is presented by Superfood. If you have a high-performance team that needs fueling, check out mysuperfd.com for more information. Hey everyone, Mike Vogel here for WashingtonCaps.com with another edition of Break the Ice, coming to you from Break the Ice National Headquarters here in Arlington, Virginia, and joined by Caps assistant coach Kirk Muller. And Kirk, welcome to our humble studio complex here. How's Washington treating you so far?
Oh, it's been awesome. I mean, it's it starts with like anything, the people you're working with. We got a great staff. We got great players to work with. Very impressed with the organization. A lot of people proud to be a part of it, and such great hockey fans. I've had a chance to, as play here against Washington and coach against Washington over the years, and it's always been a great spot. But as a city and area, and through Virginia and DC and all that, just an impressive area with so much to do.
Well, you've had a remarkable career as a player and as a coach, and we're here to kind of delve into a lot of that. 19 seasons as a player in the NHL, which to me you essentially had two playing careers, one in the top six and one as a really good checking line guy and a glue guy down the lineup later on in your career. But kind of snuck up on me, probably not on you, but this is year 18 in the coaching biz for you. So it's one more year, and you'll have matched the playing career, which I mean that's impressive. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I'll be known more as a coach than a player, but it goes by quick, and I've been fortunate. I've worked with a lot of great people, and enjoy every minute of it. It's always, I said, it's a privilege to play in the NHL and work in the NHL, and just over the years, so many things have changed, so many things stay the same. Yeah. But the one that doesn't is we got great people in our sport, and I enjoy every day coming to the rink and working with the guys.
Yeah, that's the best part of it. Every day is different. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
All right, let's go way back. You were born in Kingston, Ontario, northern shore of Lake Ontario. Grew up playing hockey there, I guess. And for me, kind of a weird thing. Like we talk about the Connor Bedard's and these kids playing junior hockey at age 15. You actually played a couple of games your age 14 season. Now, how did that work back then? Because I think that was only because it was your hometown team.
Yeah, it was. So basically, I grew up in Ontario, like you say, in Kingston, and I was playing minor hockey there, and then the level before Major Junior A, which people are familiar with, where a lot of players come out of to join the NHL, or come from Europe or come from American colleges. So there's a draft that they have there, and so young kids in Canada, like you get drafted, you leave home, you go to high school in that city, and you play junior.
And that's essentially, the draft is like, I think, when you're 16.
16, yeah. So the exception is, and it wasn't planned or anything, but I was playing a level below, and my season ended, and because I was from Kingston, you're allowed to bring kids up at any age, and they had some injuries, and they thought there's a chance that I might be able to play the next year for the hockey team, so they came up and said, why don't you practice with us? And I did, and a couple of injuries happened, and next thing you know, I'm playing in the playoffs against the Ottawa 67. So it was a great experience, and it kind of prepared me to get ready to play that next year.
And then I guess you're just living at home, right? There's no billet, and then you get drafted to Guelph, and now all of a sudden you're 3+ hours away.
Yeah. So basically, like even though I played in Kingston, they wouldn't have the rights to me. I still had to go in the draft like everybody.
When you were 16.
Yeah. And so when I was 16, I played a full year in Kingston, and then I went to Guelph, and they were an expansion team, and we're all young guys, and spent a couple of years there before I turned pro.
Well, and you had a couple of great years there, but like you say, they were not a great team, and your second year there was your draft year.
Yes.
And there was a little bit of push me pull you going on between the Team Canada hockey.
Exactly.
Hockey Canada, where they wanted you to play in the Sarajevo Olympics.
Yes.
Or potentially play in the Sarajevo Olympics, and Guelph didn't want to let you go, which I don't understand, because why would you prevent a kid from playing in the Olympics if that was a possibility? What was that like for you to be kind of caught in the middle of that at such a tender age?
Yeah, it was it was complicated because you're a Guelph player and I'm playing there,
Yeah.
and then Team Canada comes and said at the beginning of the year they said that they wouldn't take any junior A players, and as the season progressed, I think they kind of changed their mind, thinking we need some reinforcement, and then in around that time, what happened is we went to the World Juniors in Sweden, and there was about 3 or 4 of us on that team that they were watching, and so I think they said, at that time they said, listen, Olympics are coming up. Can we borrow these 4 guys for the Olympics, and then we'll get you back to your junior teams, and that's really what happened. So I do owe Guelph, a lot of thanks for them allowing me to go, and I participated in the Olympics, and had my birthday over there, and it was quite an experience. Anytime you get a chance, for kids in Canada playing hockey, we never grew up. Our dream wasn't to be in the Olympics. It was always to win the Stanley Cup. And then this opportunity just presented itself. So to play in the Olympics in '84 in Sarajevo, Yugoslavia, play against the Russians at the time, Fetisov and Kasatonov, the big 5, was just a really cool experience. And really, because of that level of hockey, it really prepared me for my next year, when I turned pro starting in Jersey.
Well, and like you alluded to those 4 guys, so pretty remarkable situation. You guys were the first 4 Canadians to play for a World Junior team and in the Olympics in the same year. And like you say, you celebrated your birthday over there. I think you were a couple of days past 18 when you played in the Olympics. And then you were the youngest guy on that team. What was that like being, in a foreign land there, and I mean, I feel like there was some unrest going on, and you had guys who were defecting from some of those places.
It was a real life lesson. You think playing hockey, it's all about hockey and all that, but the lessons and the experiences you witness and go through over the years, and that was one of them. Is that Yugoslavia months later was going through a civil war right when the Olympics ended, so we witnessed the soldiers around, a lot of the chaos that was going on, and yet here they are, hosting the Olympics. So we're fully aware of all that situation, and I'd never even been to Europe before. So I go to Sweden for the first time in the World Juniors, and just that alone at that age and traveling and seeing a different country and different cultures was pretty cool. But seeing a country like Yugoslavia in that situation was pretty unique. During the Cold War, playing against Russians and Czechoslovakia at the time, and just the obviously the Cold War plus the competition between Canada and these countries at that time was just was just a very interesting time.
And then, like you said, that was also your draft year, and that was a pretty interesting draft year because Mario Lemieux was the prize there if you could manage to finish with the worst possible record, and it looked like Jersey and Pittsburgh were really vying for that right, and I'm pretty sure that's when they sort of changed the rules to discourage that sort of thing from going on. But as a guy who was clearly one of the top couple of picks in that draft, what was your perspective as that, once you got back from the Olympics and now that draft's a couple of months away and you're finishing out the season with Guelph, but how much of an eye did you have on what was going on in the NHL between those teams and trying to figure out, is it going to be Chicago? Is it going to be New Jersey? Is it going to be Pittsburgh? How much of that was going on while you were finishing out that junior career? Yeah,
it's interesting because this is '84, and you just didn't get the media attention of today. So we all knew Mario was going to go first. I mean, he's obviously Mario Lemieux. We all know what kind of player he was and everything. And then after that, it was a couple talks about myself and a couple players, Eddie Olchuk and that, were going second or third. So, I knew the possibility of, it could go to Chicago or trades or, Jersey was going to have a second pick. But I never really focused too much on who or where. I think I was just so excited that it was my draft year. I really was. And like I said, there wasn't that media attention that you see today. So I kind of just went back to Guelph and said, hey, I got some games here to really try to crank it up and get this team, to do well and go into the playoffs and all that. So I never really was worried or concerned about where I went, or did I go second or third. I just loved playing hockey at the time, to be honest with you. So it wasn't that complicated in terms of wondering what's going to present themselves in that next chapter during the draft.
I think the big winner in that draft was Gus Badali, because he was Mario's agent and he was your agent, so
yes.
he was going to do okay either way.
Yes, that's true.
But
that's true.
What was your reaction when you and I think like this was typically the draft had been done conference call, kind of remote, but this one was held at the Forum.
Yeah.
Was it sort of the format that we know today?
Yeah, it was the same type of situation. Mario obviously went first, and my name got called, and I had my family down there. I grew up, 3 hours from
not
Montreal,
too far.
And then that was it. It was kind of like the big celebrations with the family. And you kind of just left the rink. It wasn't. It was kind of like that was that for the day, but. I had played junior at the Worlds with John McLean. He had already been drafted in New Jersey, and we became really good friends. And he said, "Hey, listen, there's a good chance you might get drafted to Jersey. By the way, the draft's going and all that would be teammates." So that was kind of cool. I started in Jersey with a really young group of guys.
Yeah.
We never went to college, obviously, and so that was sort of like our college days. And moving to the United States for the first time and living in the Jersey area, and just the experience of joining the NHL, but also just living in a fast-paced area. Like people forget sometimes, like you're pro athletes, but it was a little bit of a culture shock. To be honest with you.
And you're 18 years old too,
Yeah.
and I mean, how was that transition? Because it's you all of a sudden you got a lot of free time now on your hands too, and like you said, you're just over the river from a pretty amazing city, in New York. What was that like trying to navigate your way in on the ice as an 18-year-old in the NHL, but also all the other side stuff that was going on?
Yeah, you know what? It's so funny because I was 18, Johnny was 19, Pat Verbeek was 20, Joe Sorrell was 21.
Yeah.
So four of us lived together, all within that the 4 years apart. Then we had a big separation on our team where there's a lot of older players at the end of their career. So that's how we kind of broke in. These guys were great mentors and helped us out on and off the ice. But it was the 80s, it was like we practiced hard and went out and had lunches and beers every day together. And I'm like, if people today would be like, that's crazy. Or if I tell the players, I go, it was just a different world back then. But it was, but you had very tight, close group of players because you spent so much time together. And interesting looking back, thinking of that's what the life was at that time.
It was very different, and training camps were long, and there were a lot of preseason games because guys needed that time to get in shape from the summers.
Yeah, I mean, you guys would sit there and say, hey, it's July 1st, it's time to start working out, getting in shape, but like you say, it was long. You do 2 scrimmages a day. During training camp, you'd play way more exhibition games. So, I mean, by the time opening night hits, at the end, we're ready to go. We did it a whole different way, and probably a lot harder way than the guys today that take, such good care of themselves. They're in such great shape, and they don't need the games that we needed to get to that place. But I always remember a funny story is having a scrimmage in the morning. And 2 teammates look at each other and say, hey, like we got to fight each other just to kind of prove that we're still, good with this team. And the one guy said to the other, he goes, you know what? It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'll fight you this afternoon. It's too early.
That's good stuff. So people forget, too, that when the Caps came into the league in 1974-75, that the Devils were actually their expansion brothers. They were in the Kansas City Scouts and later the Colorado Rockies, and by the time you got to New Jersey, they'd been there for a couple of years, but they hadn't had a whole lot more success than Washington had over that period of time. And I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was at the game where you guys, the last game of the regular season, 87-88, where you guys won that game, and it was John McLean who scored the tying goal late in the third period, and then the game winner in overtime. Darren Pang was in net, and I was talking to him about this game just the other night. Chicago Stadium, And you guys, that was the first time you got in the playoffs, and you guys parlayed that into, I think, conference final that year.
Yeah.
Might have knocked out the Caps on the way. What was that like? Because you led that team in scoring, and that was kind of what put Jersey on the map, and maybe the very beginning of those Cup teams that came a few years later.
Yeah, we knew it was going to be a process there. You know, we were young, we weren't very good, but we wanted to get better, and we had a great group. Lou Lamoriello came in, did a great job. We just kept climbing and climbing. Like you say, you need that kind of spark to kind of get over the hump. And, we've been battling for a few years, and then all of a sudden that, winning goal by Johnny McLean, the last game of the year to finally make a, catch into the playoffs. And then we ran with it, and we went to 3 rounds and lost out to Boston before going to the finals. We played Washington in there, and I think to this day, believe it or not, I think it might be the most penalty minutes in one series ever in the history of the NHL, which is kind of, no one would really think, that would be that. But great teams here with Scott Stevens and, Rod Langway was such a hard group to play against. But, that was sort of the stepping stone for that organization, that we went 3 rounds, and then, we kind of carried on from there. And then, obviously they went on to win a couple of cups after that.
What was it like playing for Jim Schoenfeld? Took over that team in the middle of the season, and he was the guy who was here when I started, the first coach that I worked under here in Washington. And I don't know how he was to play for, which is why I'm asking, because he was really good with us in the media.
Yeah, well, if you remember him as a player, he's that hard player to play against, and defenseman, and he coached that way. Like he was great because he's an ex-player. He took over, and he pushed us, and made us get to that next level that we hadn't experienced yet as players at the NHL level. So I thought he was the perfect coach at the time to really push us and understand how hard it is to win hockey games in the playoffs.
When you were, I think, in your draft year in the OHL, you were voted smartest player in the OHL by a coach's poll, which speaks to the type of player that you were. But which coaches inspired you, like over the course of your career? Which ones are the ones whose voices you still may hear? Because I know that guy like Ken Hitchcock, you played for him, and then you were on his staff later on too.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think what was interesting is, like, when I grew up in, with your listeners, like in Canada, it's like, it's not like you always we had very passionate coaches, but, it was a stage where you were really on your own. You had that freedom to, it wasn't so structured like the way we grew up playing hockey. You're on a team and everything, but there wasn't that much systems. And I think because we played off of our instincts and all that, it allowed us that freedom to really, think outside the box and not be so programmed to do certain things. So I think growing up that way, and a lot of ex-NHL guys, we talk about this, as playing pond hockey outside and playing and being creative and pushing the limit on different things. And I think that allows, more room for creativity. Once you get to the NHL, of course, it's all about winning, and, coaches, and I've been really, blessed with great coaches. Ken Hitchcock was a very well-prepared coach, knew the opponents really well, had his teams always totally prepared to play whoever you were going to play against that year, and he had a real strong identity with Hitch. It was a hard-working, blue-collar style, so you knew what your role was, how you're supposed to play. Pat Burns was a great coach, had him in Montreal and Toronto. Same thing. It was he really believed in reinforcing your team. He didn't really care too much about the opponents. It was more like, this is who we are. We're going into your rink. We're playing the same way. We don't change, and that was his philosophy. And then again, Jacques Demers, who I won a cup with, he was a player's coach, very free-spirited, very open-minded, very great communicator, both ways. He wanted information. He wanted you to, he wanted to talk, and he allowed you to have, creativity and put a lot on the players for responsibility. So 3 coaches that won Stanley Cups and 3 coaches that, in different ways got the same message across.
Do you feel like that creativity that was, like you said, came from the pond hockey days? Do you feel like it sort of got tamped down by the advent of video and neutral zone traps and things like that came out of all that, and X's and O's sort of got a little prominent, and then now it seems like the game's at least it's loosened up. There's still some room for creativity out there.
Well, some of the rules have changed to allow skilled players to open up.
The obstructions,
the holding, the hooking. That used to be a part of the game. Thank God, prolonged my career. But no, I mean, there is more room out there. No red line anymore. More longer passes. So there is opportunities for players to create more stuff right now than it was before, for a while. I think there's opportunities for young kids that don't be afraid to let them go out and play. During practice and all that, a less structured type at some time, and just let them freewheel. And unfortunately, with the climate, even in Canada, we don't have as many outdoor rinks anymore. So that's where kids used to get that extra ice time and just go. But there's a lot of places that the winters aren't as cold as they used to be.
Yeah,
so
those rivers don't stay as frozen for as long.
Yeah.
You mentioned that '93 Cup team, and that was some run that you guys had. You lost. You had Quebec in the first round. You lost game 1 in overtime.
Yeah,
and that's the only overtime game you guys lost. 10-0 after that in overtime, and obviously Patrick Waugh was a big part of that. But a bunch of you guys, and you had a series clinching overtime goal in the Buffalo series. I mean, what was that like? For me, there's 2 things that stand out about that team that are kind of crazy when you look back, especially when you look at all the other teams that have won cups since then. That team might have had the youngest defense of any cup winner in the last 30 years. There's 4 defensemen on that team that were aged 22 or 23 that all had 10-plus goals, all had 25-plus points, which is remarkable in itself, but the 4 of them went on to play more than 4,000 games in the league, too.
Yeah. And
none of them were that sort of stud number 1, but they were all good second-pair guys, good two-way guys. I'm talking about Schneider, Desjardins,
JJ
Haller. Yeah, Daniel was one of the older guys.
Yeah,
Daniel and Odeline were the 2 guys who were just a shade older than the other 2, but you look at every other team that won the cup, that's the one team that has the least amount of blue line experience, but 16-4, you can't argue with that.
Yeah, it was really it was interesting how the team was built, because we weren't a very fast team up front. In fact, when we do drills and practices, we didn't want to skate against the D because they were faster than we were. But it was interesting. Serge Savard, GM for 10 years.
Yeah.
3 Stanley Cup appearances, wins 2. Pretty remarkable and pretty smart hockey player in his day, and obviously a GM and
too.
Put a team together with mobile defensemen to move the puck, which was not at that time. It was a little bit more like having big physical D and having a mix. So we were a really good puck moving team out of our zone, and we were a well balanced team. We weren't considered the major superstars or anything, but it really proves that if a team really, gels together and has the same philosophy and works together and accepts their roles and plays as a team, you never know what's going to happen. And we're the first to say that we were not the best team at all during that couple of years, but we strung together good seasons, and we played so well as a group that good things happen.
You guys really hit your stride too when it mattered the most. And as a guy who played in both of those markets, Montreal and Toronto, looking back on it now and seeing kind of what it's like playing in those cities now, and you obviously have a good handle on what it's like playing in Montreal, having been back there as an assistant a couple of times. What are your thoughts on how that's sort of evolved, that sort of fishbowl situation of the constant media attention, and did you favor either of those situations? Looking back, did you have more enjoyment? I mean, obviously you win a cup in Montreal. That's going to stand out. But what was it like playing in those two cities in those days?
Well, I mean, in Montreal, if you really paint the picture, they don't have an NBA team. They lost the Expos and all that. So it's a team that's really people are very loyal to all year round. So because of they're missing a couple other major sports teams, you imagine the media attention focuses on that club, and it's all year round. So there's the English and there's the French and media. So there's so much attention and to that hockey team, and they have the history and there's a lot of pressure to win, a lot of expectations. Normally when we were there and I was in my prime years, so. I thought it was great because, the season is hard and to be good 82 games a year is difficult. But I just found the nights that you didn't have it and the fans let all of a sudden it's like amazing how the mind tricks your body and you get that second energy and second win. So I just thought that type of atmosphere was what I really enjoyed as a player at the time. So it pushed you, but I just thought it was awesome. And very similar to Toronto, the very loyal, hockey fans. Obviously, they got a couple of more sports teams there, but it's a big area. It's a very populated area in Ontario. So that there's a lot of proud, Maple Leafs, original 6 people, and again, the expectations are high. So I guess I enjoyed that pressure and the expectations, and I just thought it pushed you as an individual and as an athlete.
I think you got traded to the Islanders at the deadline in that lockout season.
Yeah.
And you had the good sense to – the Islanders were kind of a mess at that point. They were about to have a really ugly ownership thing come around after you got out of there. But you didn't really take to that situation. And looking back on that now, what
it was actually kind of a stuff got out of proportion, but at the end of the day, what really happened was I'd spent 7 years of my career in Jersey on a rebuilding team, and I was really proud to be a Devil at the time. We grew up together, all us young guys. We grinded through it, and then I get traded to Montreal, and I had 4 great years there as far as enjoying it and everything. When I got traded back to the island, the big thing was they wanted to rebuild. It was the discussion. I was going into my 12th year. I didn't know I was going to play 19. I thought I might be playing 14, 15. And I said, listen, nothing against the New York Islanders. I have most respect for that organization and all those Hall of Fame players that played there. I had just said, hey, listen, 7 years I committed to a rebuild. At my stage of my career, I said, okay, I don't really feel like I want to go through it again. I'm more after in the present and trying to win another cup, and that was really it. So it had not, things got a little misquoted or different things, but at the end of the day, that's all it really was.
Well, and that happens in that market for sure. And then you wound up playing a few years in Florida and get back to the Cup final in Dallas in 2000, I think it was. What was the transition like from going? Because you had I think 5 seasons with 30 goals, 9 seasons with 20 or more goals, but you stayed in the league and were still an effective player. And the other thing that's kind of wild to me is like you had a consecutive game streak early in your career. It was like 370 games or so, and played through a lot of stuff then. But even later in your career, eye, ankle, wrist, back spasms, all kinds of stuff. You really did live the every single. You think about it: top 6, bottom 6, checking line, power play, PK, Stanley Cup, rebuilding teams. You ran the gamut, and I think that all that experience has to have had an effect on you as a coach.
It really has, and I think that's the enjoyable part is dealing with players today is, you know, they don't want to hear about my past, and I never talked to them about it, obviously, but it's the experiences that I can help them with. You know, then you hit it on the nail. You know, I was lucky. I broke in as a high draft pick, number 1 center, and as the years went by, you know, number 2, third line check-in center, fourth line healthy scratch. But it gave me an opportunity to really see the game through everyone's eyes. You know, as far as in different roles, and whether you're an offensive guy or a check-in guy or a healthy scratch or an older player, and I think that those experiences really helped me with the players, and I think they respect the fact that I did go through it, and that I can relate to them in those scenarios. So I try to use those experiences with the guys, and you know, guys that, you know, haven't scored in 10 games, or, you know, slumps, or, you know, pretty much every scenario I think I've kind of gone through, you know, playing with injuries. And so, yeah, I think it really has helped. And I think that's why I've been able to kind of stay in the game, is because even though I'm getting older and the players are young, I think I could still kind of relate with them. Those type of things don't really change in the game.
How would you compare the process of sort of finding your way, finding your place on a team? You know, anytime you move to a new team, you're looking to open some eyes, show these coaches what you're all about as a player, etc. What's that like now, as when you go from you know, one organization to another as a coach, and especially in the situation here where you're working under the youngest head coach in the league, and a guy who's in the NHL for the first time. You're kind of the glue guy here. It's sort of what we just talked about. You've been through everything. You've experienced everything. You're kind of here to help guide these guys in a sense. What's it like, sort of meshing and developing that staff chemistry, which I think people don't really understand. Like that's pretty important to the flow as well.
Well, I think it starts with obviously with Carbs. You know, he put his staff together, and you know, his belief was to really get a group that believes in the same stuff, very flexible, and you know, in what they do. You know, he's very open-minded on ideas, suggestions. We're all in it together. It's not, you know, this is his team and everything's, you know, what he wants to do. So he's really opened it up for us all to, you know, be inclusive and add our ideas and all that. And like you say, like I think it's awesome because it's a young staff. I kind of sit back sometimes and just let them have that eagerness and that youthness. And, you know, Mitch, you know, has worked so hard. And for example, is, you know, first time in the NHL. And I just sit back and love how enthused they are and how excited they are for these opportunities. And if there's times there where, you know, a little guidance on, you know, because it is different, you know, working in the NHL and working with superstars and you know, guys that have been established and everything, that you know, how you handle them, and you know, with practices, games, ice time, you know, communication. So it's really important. So I've really enjoyed working with these guys, and that's where I think it starts with.
Those 19 seasons that you played, was there a point in that period of time where you thought coaching might be something that you wanted to do? Because I know there was a gap between the end of your playing career, and that's understandable too. You might just need a couple of years to reset. But so two-part question, I guess, is were you sort of thinking about becoming a coach, and how did it come about that you joined Guy Carbonneau's staff there in Montreal?
Yeah, well, very wise guy that I have a lot of respect for, Bob Gainey. I finished up in Dallas, and when I finished playing, you know, I was like, you know, what do I do next? And you know, he had great advice. He's like, you know, why don't you take a year off? You spent your whole life playing hockey, and since a kid and everything, and you know, the 19 years of playing. And he says, take a year off and enjoy the family and all that. And then if you get the itch or whatever, you'll know you want to get back into the game, or you want to venture off and do something different. And I kind of took that. You know, I was like, wow, there's so many things I've never had a chance to do, you know, in my life because it takes up so much time.
Yeah.
And I did. I took a year off, and then I went back to Queen's University, which is a Canadian university in my hometown, and they asked me to, you know, coach, and I said, I'll try it out, see if I like it. I'm right back in my hometown anyway, and I enjoyed it. And then all of a sudden, Guy Carbonneau, an old teammate, called me and says, I heard coach Montreal Canadiens, would you come join it? And I jumped on board and I was right back into it.
I think you worked under 6 different head coaches there in the two stints
Yes.
in Montreal. And how different was that, seeing that from being a player to being a coach in 2 different buildings and, all of those things too?
Yeah. Well, you know what? The styles changed even in Montreal. When I was playing there, we were a very well coached team. Defensively. We couldn't keep up with the Pittsburgh Penguins of Mary Lemieux and Ronnie Francis and these guys. They had a lot of star Hall of Fame guys. There was elite teams at the time, so we're like, if we want to do well, we got to be a good team without the puck and be better defensively, and obviously it worked. But and now if you look at the NHL, the East versus the Western Conference, there's more offensive minded teams in the East now, and it's a little more wide open skating. Where out West, it's there's still it's the philosophy out there, a little bigger, heavier teams. So the Montreal teams now are a little more, on skill and speed and everything, different than when I played there. So it changes over the course of, you take the group of players you have and try to find the identity and, whatever you think is the best for that group. So, but at the end of the day, the both ranks, they did a good job of building the new arena, the Bell Center, and it's still got great enthusiasm there, and it's a fun place to play.
It's a great place to watch a game too. And what went into, I guess, after 3-4 years in Montreal, got an opportunity with the Carolina organization, which originally started out in one of my favorite cities, Milwaukee, but not for long. Like you got bumped up to head coach, I think replaced Paul Maurice maybe.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I think Johnny McLean and Rob Brindamore were on your staff there too. What was that like you're taking a job in the American League, and then a couple weeks later, all of a sudden, it's an NHL head job.
Yeah, it wasn't the plan, I guess. I was in Montreal. I was like, I felt like that was the right time to go earn my stripes, and if I wanted to be a head coach, so I said if I do that, I got to go to the minors, and I went to Milwaukee, a part of Nashville's organization, and started out there, and told my wife, be ready. It could take 2 or 3 years of living, in Milwaukee to see if anything develops from it. And I think like a month later, I got the call from Carolina saying we made a change, and Jimmy Rutherford hired me in Carolina. So more interesting than anything is I had a daughter in 12th grade and brought her from Canada down to Milwaukee. She's trying to go to university, and then from there, I said, oh boy, I just brought you over the border to United States, and now I'm moving to Carolina. Now I got to move you to another high school. But the good news is she ended up she got into NC State and everything worked out. But
good.
That's not really the time you probably should be moving to a 12th grader and try to get into universities. But I get into Carolina, had a great experience, and worked with Johnny McLean and Roddy Brindamore. Another teammate Dave Lewis was there, and it was a great learning experience for me as a head coach.
And here in Washington, obviously, one of your responsibilities is the power play, which scuffled a little bit last year. But I mean, there are obviously extenuating factors. A lot of those guys were out for chunks of the season. But what's your approach when you come in and you're trying to familiarize yourself with a new crop of players, and you're tackling the task of trying to get some really successful guys back on track and maybe change up, just open up the air and open up the windows and let some air in.
Yeah, well, I give the guys credit. They've been open. I come in and I'm like, hey, and I think it's communication, really. Like, it's not like we came out gangbusters at the beginning of the year on the power play, but I like the looks that we're getting right now. I just said to them, listen, I've seen you guys for over a decade for some of them, with Bax and obviously, Ovi and that, and, Stromer's kind of come in new and that. And I said, you guys have things that you're really, really good at, and you've had great success. How about some couple other ideas I have that might make it a little more unpredictable and give some different looks so that you guys can be more dangerous in that. So it's coming together. They still have some of their plays that you see over the years that they're really fine-tuned on and they're good at, and but they've been good at listening to some other options and giving it a different look, and we're just piecing that together now. So the last few games, I think the last 3 games, it's looked pretty dangerous.
I thought it was a lot of fun to watch yesterday. Just the movement. How much of that it's obviously guys need to read and react off one another. Are there kind of trigger points that they're looking for amongst themselves where that tells them kind of?
Yeah, well, you know what, penalty killers, it's like something they kill differently now than they did 6-7 years ago, even 5 years ago. So just saying, hey, this is how they're killing. Here's some other options that might work against that. And I think it's just the areas that present themselves that you can find that you can attack. It's obviously everyone's seen Ovi with the one-timer and the great low plays they make in the corners, but the bringing the puck up higher more, going side to side, spreading the penalty killing out. Afraid that you're going to attack from the other side, attack from behind the net. You've seen some plays that way. Keeping the shot volume from up top from the guys like Carlson and Sandy and all that. So you're getting threats from the half walls, the goal line, from the top, with the defensemen, so in both sides. So it's just being more unpredictable and more motion and attacking with numbers rather than just a one hit type really awesome play and then that's it. So that's kind of the philosophy of what we're trying to instill.
Last thing before we let you go, and you brought it up, so I want to ask you about it. Attacking from behind the net. And New Jersey ran a power play probably 20 years ago or so now where they had, I think it was Jason Arnott in the middle, Rafalski and Niedermeyer at the points, Eliash, and I can't remember who the other guy was, but they had 2 guys below the goal line.
Yeah.
Where so you're forcing the defense to defend with their backs to the guys who are going to hurt them.
Yes.
I mean, and it was successful. How come we don't see that alignment in the league anymore? I remember seeing that and marveling at. Maybe it's personnel based. I'm not sure, but it seemed effective, and I haven't seen anybody run that in a long time.
Yeah, and you see it more in 5-on-3, but like you say, you don't see it so much 5-on-4. But you're starting to see a little bit more motion of guys starting to go behind the net. It's starting to creep in a little bit more because penalty killers are so good. And more than even that is that the goaltending is so good. Yeah. So you think every time if you play behind the net, that goalie has to go tight into his net, and it makes it difficult for a goalie that if you move it out, set up, and attack with shots, he's so deep in his net, it's not what their comfort zone is. So it makes it really tough on goalies when you're getting lateral passes behind the net, and he's following it, and he's in deep. So a lot of times that's tough on the goalies.
Well, we're going to enjoy watching the evolution of the power play here as the season unfolds, and it's been fun to see their growth even in these first 8 games. Thanks so much to Kirk Muller for spending some time with us here on Break the Ice. Thanks to producer extraordinaire Zach Garrett, and we'll see you next time here on Break the Ice. Superfood Performance Nutrition fuels the Washington Capitals players and staff on and off the ice. Each bite is energy-packed, highly nutritious, and engineered to boost recovery time. When they're not feeding pro athletes, Superfood is bringing the same high-quality nutrition to offices nationwide through their flagship corporate meal program, Simply Lunch. So if you have a high-performance team that needs fueling, check out mysuperfd.com for more information.